The pastasauce factory, this building that we set up as a recording studio, became like a small arts community.
Is it also why you chose to find a space in Rhode Island where you could be all by yourself?
Yeah, we
make the space the way you wanted it to be.
When we record, we always look for some kind of isolated space that takes on its own language and pace, and everybody there starts to get in the same headspace, you know. The pastasauce factory, this building that we set up as a recording studio, became like a small arts community, and so people are coming in, filmmakers and photographers and painters, because the light is so beautiful in this building, and there's all this space, and we set up it's kind of like this tiny little society. You know, it had a living area and a musical working area, and then a visual arts area over here, and there's a tennis court in this corner of the room. You know, just all kinds of, just a little functioning society, and it was so nice to have that isolation and to have this lifestyle that you're all sharing while you work on the process. There's a kind of connectivity, I think, that's required. On our first record, we went to a vacation island, and we're all isolated there in the winter when it was empty. So again, we had no distractions and just each other, and doing that just creates a certain intensity that is special, and you don't know what will happen when you go into that situation. So this was done in a different setting sonically, because the room was huge, and we were interested in this sound and being able to put mics in every corner of the room to capture a different quality and to capture a natural sound as opposed to using too many plugins, Pro Tools plugins. There's no Pro Tools reverb on this record. The reverb is created by reamping a sound into the space and capturing it and blending that with the dry signal in just such a way that it's exciting, but it remains real. It's something that actually happened in the room, because the plugins are just too boring. You know, the ear recognizes them and knows what they are and isn't excited by them. So the idea was to make sure that what we were recording was something that actually was happening. We have all our best shows in big rooms, you know, like rooms like the Paradiso, which has a huge high ceiling, so the sound goes up there and comes back, and what you get is a natural reverb. It makes certain things hard, right? It's hard to have like a tight drum kit sound or a tight bass sound. Certain things get washy, but we prefer that to a small club where the sound is too tight and too controlled, and you have to turn up the reverb to get a sense of ambience or landscape, you know. We prefer to have the sound interacting naturally in the room.
Using the space as an instrument.
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah.
So we had just learned that from playing live shows. We knew that these big rooms were the rooms where we were having the exciting shows. So we looked for a factory because it gave us that kind of scale and that kind of sound coming back to us.
Yeah, can you describe what the route towards finding this pastasauce factory looked like? What other things did you see that didn't fit your?
Well, Providence is one of these post-industrial cities that used to have jewelry industry, cutlery, knives, bayonets, textiles, and all of these mill buildings are now raw space. So we were able to look at many different buildings like this, and we would just go around and we're clapping and listening to the decay, and we're singing into the room. And when we went into this building, just visually and instantly, when we heard the acoustics, it seemed right. It was overwhelmingly big. The sound was unfocused in a way that we were taken by. But it took a long time to actually learn how to use it. Once we started recording, things were so washy and there were no close reflections, so a lot of the recordings that we got had a centerless sound because the dry signal was so thin, and then the reverb was so far away. So it took a lot of experimenting with different room mics and with reamping things into various chambers of the factory to get the process going that we ended up using. But that was great. You know, every record has a different kind of like research that you do in the space that you're using to figure out what works.
What did the room look like when you finally had found out how it had to be? Were there like mics everywhere?
Yeah.
And because it really also sounds like it's recorded in sort of playground with all kind of weird equipment.
Yeah. There were instruments all over the recording end of the room, which is it's probably the size of a football pitch, you know. And then on the back corner, we had run cables where there were amps that were reamping things like the vocals or different sensitive things that maybe are so quiet in the way they're played, but then are blasted into the acoustic space and recaptured. So there was this elaborate system of amps that you could use as reverb sends. And there's a different room that had tin walls and had a very sibilant reflective reverb, long decay reverb, concrete floor. The main room, you know, we ended up staggering mics at about 50-foot intervals going across the room. And, you know, every song was slightly different, but we figured out how much of which ones we would blend to get what kind of saturation in the reverb.
Mm.
And to some success, by the end we thought it was too much and that the sound was too hollow, so we did another session in a smaller building that had more close reflections and gave a different kind of contrast.